what that really kind of awakened in me is just like an avoidance of conflict.
Picked up on that as a little girl because you saw the conflict and you saw unresolved conflict. Conflict in and of itself is not a problem unless you don't
True,
know how to resolve
true.
it.
Mm-hmm.
But as a little
Mm-hmm.
girl, you don't know what to do with that. So conflict is bad. Conflict makes me feel
Right.
unsafe. Those are the things I share with my clients because everybody, that little girl just wanted to feel safe and she wanted to feel loved.
Sisters, hey, little girl, are you looking for hope in a world that has lied to you about who you really are? Grown woman, holding in story, she needs to tell what God really wants you to do in this world. In His name, hope to break free from the shackles and the lies.
Welcome back to Staci Speaks Hope. We're so grateful to have the opportunity to hear from Carol Muleta, our guest today. What a blessing. She comes as a mother of twins, a 9-time author, a speaker, coach, parenting consultant that coaches parents to work with their children. And she's the host of Parenting 411, the podcast, Parenting 411. We are so grateful for you to join us today, Carol. How are you
Thank
today?
you. I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. Glad to
Good.
be here with you. So, Carol, anything I left off that you'd like the audience to know about you before we get started?
Oh, I just want everybody to know that my mission is to deliver information parents need from sources they can trust.
Love it. Well, thank you for that. So, we're going to jump right in. Carol, what do you know? What do you remember about your little girl?
Wow, I remember my little girl was very cautious, very concerned about what other people thought, wanted to make sure I always did the right thing and those things. I believe when I was younger too, I was a little bit of a worrier. So
Mm,
I trusted things were going to happen once I saw it happen, that kind of thing. And I'm not sure where the origin of that is, but it could be traced back to when my parents got divorced when I was 11.
mm. That was of course my next question. Where did that come from? How did that start? Do you remember a time?
Right. Prior to that, I don't recall being as uh, cautious or worrying about whether something's going to unfold like that I want to happen. So,
Hmm. Okay, good. How did that show up in your life, in the way you interacted with other people, with how you felt about yourself, how you felt about your parents, if that made if you made that connection?
uh, yes. So, as far as the splitting up, it was a good thing for them to split up. They didn't get along, so that was well, the rational part of me understood that. Like, okay, when you
Mm-hmm.
all are not in the same room, things are good. So I
Wow.
understood that part. But what it also showed is that things can change.
Mm.
And so I think when you're a child, a lot of times, you just don't even worry about those things. Of course, you're going to be able to do the things that you want to do and all. But so that showed me that things could change. Now, to my mother's credit, she kept things as much the same as she could. Like we stayed in the house. She wanted the house, and so that we could stay in the same neighborhood, go to the same schools, have the same friends, and
Right,
all of
right.
those sorts of things. So that was a good thing. But it also taught me that I need to make sure that I'm prepared to take care of myself
Mm,
always. And in her case, because she was prepared, I mean, in the tail end of her marriage, she had gone back to school to get another degree in another field. She knew that the marriage would be ending. We didn't,
mm,
but
uh-huh.
she knew that. So she was ready to step into her career. And so I didn't know it when I was 5 years old when she first started that part, her
Okay.
first leg of her education. But I but I was able to step back and see how she was able to survive and care for us and provide for us. And that was, when I started hitting the teens and my 20s, I was like, yeah, I need to always be ready just in case I'm on my own.
Okay. So two things. You got to see your mother be intentional and strategic, not
Yes.
necessarily knowing it. And how many
Right.
siblings do you have?
I have two. I have one brother who is like 5 years older than me, and then my sister's 12 years older. So my brother and I spent more time growing up together
Hmm.
than I did with my sister.
Sure. And then she didn't overtly tell you. You said you figured it out in your late in your 20s, the early 20s, but after the divorce and after you watched her. So she didn't teach you
Believe
that
it or
lesson per
not,
se.
she never said, like when I was a young woman, say, for example, she never
Yeah.
said, well, Carol, you remember what happened? She never said that, but I observed it.
Mm. Okay.
So,
So that was also something about you being observant and make connecting those dots.
right, right. And I think I've always been an observer. One of my sons is very much an observer like that as well. So, it took me a long time to just kind of come out of that and be more of a doer and not
Mm.
worry about uh, seeking approval from certainly my peers. Now, I don't mean
Yeah.
approval or an authority from, authority figures, but
Hmm.
just really being comfortable living
Yeah.
my way.
Hey, maybe you're curious. You've heard me talking about the little girl archetypes. The resilient mover is the one that moved all the time, maybe was a tomboy, and when it was time to sit still and feel your feelings, that's foreign to you. Or if you played dress up and could always fit in, great in social settings, but when it's time to stand up and be the real you, the one God called you to be, you've kind of lost her and are disconnected. Or if you took care of everybody, you played dolls and house and all that was great, or you took responsibility, but now you're tired, you might be a little resentful, or you just feel ashamed or for taking care of yourself or guilty. And finally, if you were the one that played hide and seek, you knew how to fade to the background, you knew how to blend in, but now it's time to stand up and be seen, and you're very uncomfortable in that space because you don't feel like you should be seen. These are the clues that might help you begin your little girl healing journey. Take the quiz, get your results. This is big work, and I understand that.
My question from that was there a connection in your parenting that you made
Mhm.
to what you saw from your mother or your parents? I don't know where your father ended up after the divorce, so I'll speak to both of those
Oh,
and let you respond.
yes. Yes. Yeah. So my father was around, visited, weekly visitation and all of that. He didn't disappear. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so regarding my parenting, I would say that I was very organized and intentional. And actually, I felt like I sort of had to loosen up a little bit because I do have a partner. I am married. And
Mm-hmm.
so I also, because of his support, I was also able to be a little bit more of who my mother was before the divorce, right?
Yeah.
So she'd be singing around the house, humming, and just was more playful. She was
Yeah.
always, always, I wouldn't say stern, but always expected us to behave it properly and good manners and all of that kind of thing. But she was a lot more fun. And in fact, my cousins, older cousins, always talk about her. Like, even as an adult, they're like, "Oh, she was so much fun. We used to do this and this and this." And I had to, for a time, it was like, who are y'all talking about? Because I didn't remember that. And she wasn't mean after the divorce, but she was more focused and more serious. And so that was me. And then I was able to really settle in and be more, I was able to just be a lot more engaged and playful and all of that with my children because I had the support, and I even
Yeah.
stayed home after I had them too. So that really allowed me to
Blessing.
do that. So it was kind of a blend of both sides of my mom, I guess I could say.
The before and after.
Yes. Hmm.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think just going back as your 11-year-old self, or even
Hmm.
before in the time before that, leading up to it, you said when they weren't in the room together, it was very peaceful and different than when they were. What did that feel like? Do you remember that experience as the little girl
Hmm.
and how it made you feel in your home and with other people?
So until right toward the end, like when they really decided to separate and then proceed on to divorce, I didn't, there was probably tension, but I was not as aware of it as, or consciously aware of
Mm-hmm.
it at that point. There would be tension. No, it wouldn't necessarily be arguing or anything like that, but it'd just be tense. And but so I remember that. But then in terms of when there were arguments, I what that really kind of awakened in me is just like an avoidance of conflict. Like I've come a long way for sure, but well into my 20s and maybe early 30s even, I didn't really like conflict. And so what would happen is that, I'm pretty easygoing and I generally still am, but I would let things go and let things go, not speak up, not speak up. And then you do something like step on my toe and boom. It's
Okay.
like, and then I'm going to tell you about everything you did for the, for the past
Wait, hold on.
15
Let me pull out the
years.
list.
And it's, and, and I probably will hurt your feelings. I mean, the things, because just because I didn't say anything doesn't mean I didn't notice it. And so, every now and then I still every now and then I still find that I allow things to build up too much. But that that experience with them definitely made me not like conflict. I don't like really intense, animated talking. Like I'm definitely going to be, if I'm out, say I'm out in public or something like that at a restaurant and I see people and I hear people rather having this intense argument, I'm going to be checking like, are they smiling? Are they talking about sports? Are they what? I mean, that's my antenna goes up immediately. And then when I look over and see that, yes, they're just talking about their
They're
favorite teams
loud.
or whatever. And then I'll just settle down. And the funny thing is, one of my sons is that same way. He is as well. The one that's really observant, he's the
Yeah.
same way. He checks stuff out, and no matter how someone tells him that, oh, things are okay, I'm not mad or whatever, he's skeptical.
Wow. That's interesting. Because there's that blend of what we inherit, and maybe in his observance, he can see that in you to say, oh, if mom's like that, I need to be like that. And that you picked up on that as a little girl because you saw the conflict and you saw unresolved conflict. Conflict in and of itself is not the problem. unless you don't
True.
know how to resolve
True.
it.
Mm-hmm.
But as a little
Mm-hmm.
girl, you don't know what to do with that. So conflict is bad. Conflict makes me feel
Right.
unsafe. Those are the things I share with my clients because everybody, that little girl just wanted to feel safe and she wanted to feel loved. She felt loved, but
Mm-hmm.
the safety factor
Mm-hmm.
and that
Mm-hmm.
emotion pops back up in adult Carol
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
that's a genuine feeling. That's nothing you can make up.
Right. And it's interesting. It would be interesting to know because he was an infant. Like I was still in diaper changing mode when I noticed that he was that way, and I'm not sure what he had really no big things happening that he saw how, but I don't know, maybe he just sensed that I'm that sort of person. But I will say that there, sometimes we're situations where we've been where people have been loud and they're actually just animated talking and whatever, and it's fine. But he was 6 and 7 years old, and he wasn't sure, so he'd stick right close to me, right up under me. And then my other son, who has a slightly different personality, he's over playing with his Nintendo DS, totally oblivious. Like there could be a fight happening in the restaurant, and he wouldn't even know about it because he's so engrossed in his game. I mean, that's how different their
Yeah,
personalities are. But yeah, it's interesting. But what I did, because I noticed that so early, I just figured out that's part of his temperament, and I have to figure out how he can channel that for his good. Like I have to help him to strike that balance from being cautious or nervous, particularly when there really is nothing to worry about,
yeah,
without snuffing out that tendency to observe and keep your eye on the ball. And so
right.
yeah, that came in handy when they were teenagers, and we talked about started letting them go to parties and things like that.
Yeah,
I would say, it can very easily start off nicely, but all we need is one person to walk in the room with a different vibe and things can change. So always pay attention. And,
yeah.
I could count on him to do that.
You didn't have to tell him twice. He already knew. But it's
Didn't
funny
have to
because,
tell
right?
him. No, I know, right. No, I didn't have to tell him twice. And then there were even some parents of their friends that would ask, "Oh, is your son going?" Because like if he was going, they felt more comfortable with their son going because they knew he would flag anything that didn't look right.
That is so good because what I was going to say is that you can call that discernment,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
He came with discernment and
He came with
you
discernment.
developed
Yeah.
that discernment through experience, but also in utero, you transmitted that to him more very likely. Yes, you carried him. That being part of you became part of who he is. And again, if you, I love that you say striking that balance because you don't want to be
Mm-hmm.
nervous, but you
Right.
do want to be aware. The
That's
Bible says, be
interesting. I
as
hadn't even
wise
thought of
as
it.
a serpent and as gentle as a dove.
As a dove, yes.
So there's
Yes,
that.
I had never thought about that. I never thought about that. And it's interesting that when you say that, um, my other son, who just from minute one, honestly, even in the womb, just had so much energy and just came out so curious and just all into everything, talking. He was funny and all of that. And it's like, wow, like I would look at him and feel like, man, I wish I had been that kind of kid because he has fun. He and both of them were fun in their own way, but you know what I'm saying? He just
Right.
lived for it, lived to play. And I had fun as a child, but I don't remember having as much fun as he did. Uh, I'm not sure where that came from.
No, well, because we're talking about your little girl, and I was saying, how do we loop this to your little girl? That little girl learned to be cautious because And and I'll say maybe like this to consider is that feeling safe was more important to you than having fun. He's not thinking about being safe. Your little girl said, I need to make sure I'm safe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It could just be that. And those are very real, deeply embedded ways that
Mm-hmm.
we see the world. The seeds that were planted were things
Mm-hmm.
could change. So that safety is not
Right.
guaranteed.
Right. Right.
So as a teenager, as you grew from that, how did that show up in the way you interacted, relationships? Were you being observant and how you acted on that? What did that look like?
I was observant, pushed the envelope a little bit more. Like to have fun with friends and all of that, and even in college too. But I guess that common sense and that being observant and being aware kind of showed up more in my studies. I mean, even as a
Mm,
young child, I was a very good student, but it was like have fun, but remember what you're supposed to be doing. Remember what you're here
okay.
for. That kind of
Yeah.
thing. And that's another thing that my mother never had to have that conversation with me. I knew go to school, you have 4 years, get it done.
Get it done.
Yeah. So, so I just didn't kind of engage in some of what I saw some people, the semester would start and they would drop the class because they didn't like the professor. They dropped the class because it was getting hard or whatever. And I was like, you're in it. If it's part of your major or if it's a requirement, you're in it. Work it out. Because I know that you can get out of a class and then they don't offer it again for the next 2.5 years and you need to graduate. So
Right.
I didn't play those games.
All right. That's good. And what about in dating? How did the cautiousness, the observant mannerisms show up in your dating life?
Um, yes, I was like that. I was cautious in terms of who I selected. So I wasn't one of those girls or young women that looked at every guy as a potential husband. But if I couldn't see you as a potential husband, then I didn't want to date you. So you had to be about your books. It helps to be nice looking and just clean, well dressed. That was important to me. And nice. Although nice was more important as I got older and learned a few things. But some, so some of the more superficial stuff slipped in at the beginning. But I always wanted somebody that was smart, doing well in school or serious about school, whether it was high school or college. That was always important to me. And yeah, so that's again sort of a safety net, if you will, like not having somebody that's going to pull me down or create problems
Mm,
for me. And so, not going to say I got it right every time,
mhm.
but those were the kinds of things that got my attention and I could walk away. Sometimes you have relationships and you know it's not right for you, but oh, he does this or he does that and you let things slide. Those kinds of things, if you weren't serious about school or like even the early days when I graduated and I was working, if you weren't serious about your job and doing your job well and moving up and having that potential for promotion, that got my attention very
Okay.
quickly.
So again, observing how their character and how it showed up in their life, the way they function on the day to day, a factor.
Yes, yes. I mean, yeah, I can think of one time where because sometimes compared to other people, it just seemed like it's too rigid. And so,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'd be like, oh, well, maybe I'm making too big a deal about this. And
Mm,
then And then I'd let my guard down, and then sure enough, I should have listened to my first mind. So
Yeah.
that's happened
Yeah.
too. And I firmly believe that when God gives you that discernment and you kind of brush it aside, he kind of pulls back on it a little bit. He's like, okay, you're not going to use
Oh,
this
so you ain't
thing?
gonna listen, I see.
You're not going to use this tool that I've given you? Okay, let me pull it back a little bit. So I've experienced that as well. And, and then I would say my mid to late 20s, I was like, okay, God, you know what? I went through this little thing where I tried to pick the right person. I'm not even interested in anybody. You send the next one. You send the next one. I can't. I can't do I can't do it. And he did. And so we've been married 30 years.
Oh wow, congratulations. And that's such an important factor. That's beautiful. I think we dull our senses when we have discernment and we don't listen. I don't think he speaks less. I think we since we kind of turned our ears so we couldn't hear. Just a
Oh
thought.
yeah, he's faithful. He didn't go anywhere. It's us. But I just felt like sometimes maybe he didn't speak as loud as he
Yeah.
had because well, she's not listening anyway, so let her go
Okay.
on.
But that's beautiful. Again, the you craved a type of person to be with as a husband. The seeds were planted as a little girl, the kind of household that you were in, both that it was a family that had provision and education as part of life. So that was a standard. The caution was you got to stay and be consistently that way. So let me not even fool with you if that's not what your life is going to be.
Right. And it's funny. I didn't know this saying when I was younger, but Dr. George Fraser, he has a saying, if you can't build with them, don't chill with them. And I was like, wow, I lived that. I actually did live that. I only heard him say that probably within the past 5 years. But I was like, wow, I actually lived that. And something else that I think also factors in, I should say that factors into my development too, is that when I was about 22 years old, my mother got remarried.
Oh.
And my stepfather was very safe and orderly.
Mm.
And he was really, he'd served in several branches of the military, actually. By that
Okay.
time, he was retired. But everything had its place, everything had its time. He was a kind man, but he was very orderly with his life. And you figure I was 22. I thought I was grown. I just was happy for her that she was getting
Mm-hmm.
married and all of that. I didn't expect to really grow as close to him as I ultimately did, or learn as much from him because when they got married, I lived in another city and then I went to graduate school. So he wasn't raising me in the house, but I spent
Mm.
a lot of time with them, and I guess a lot of that rubbed off. But one thing you could say about him is he was steady, secure, dependable.
Yeah. So again, setting a foundation. Even we're still
Mm-hmm.
learning in our 20s.
Mm-hmm.
We're not really
Oh
grown.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I know, man. It's like that's so hilarious that I thought I had the world all figured out at that point.
Good to look back at and laugh because we had no idea. But it's also
Hmm.
beautiful that that's decent and in order. Again, aligning with the word. You saw a
Yes.
life that was decent and in order, and that became your standard. And then being able to surrender it to God was I have been trying to control everything. Did you have
Yes.
consciously have that thought when you went
Yes. I mean, that's what I
into
said. I
marriage?
was like, listen, and it's not like I had these crazy relationships. I mean, drama that would make for a good soap opera or anything like that. I'm still fairly straight arrow, but it was just wasting my time, not a good experience, heartache, all of that. So I said, well, I obviously don't know what I'm doing. So you go ahead. I mean,
That's beautiful. So
you
has
you
your
do
faith
this.
been part of your whole life? You have had where did that come in? Has that always been there?
Uh, yes. So, yes, my family were particularly, my mother, very, involved in church, attending church regularly, by vacation Bible school, all of that stuff. And then, my brother was ordained as a minister in high school. I think it was high
Oh wow.
school. It might have been maybe been ninth grade, but anyway, he
Okay.
very early on. And so, of course, that was in the house. I mean, his presence as well. And he also shaped a lot of who I am too, I believe. And so there was that. And then even, when I went off to college, I still had those values, but at the same time, listen, I'm out on my own, so you know how that is. So, I mean, but I was never somebody that like didn't pray, didn't have a Bible or anything like that. I wasn't like that, but kind of uh loosened up a little bit. And then let's see, I graduated graduated from college, and I don't know, probably about 2 years after that or something, I had a car accident.
Hmm.
And it was really interesting the way it happened. Like I had the accident, spun around, all of that. It was a rainy day, and this truck driver got out of his car and he was like, "You got to get your car out of the road," because I was just sitting there stunned. And so I got it out
Yeah.
of the car, got it over to the side, and almost as soon as I got my car over to the side, another car skid on in the rain on the pavement and went right under a truck, like under an 18 wheeler. Not his truck, but a
Mm.
different one.
Um,
And I was like, wow. I mean, because first of all, the fact that I was sitting there stunned and nobody ran into me even then, and
right.
everybody was just stopped. And so anyway, I was like, okay, yeah, I need to get it together. That was one thing. And then probably that same year, I there was a fire in my apartment building. And that was I was asleep, and I just woke up. I heard these voices saying there's too much smoke. And like why I heard it, I don't know, because I was asleep, like deep. And sure enough, it was on fire. And so I ran down the hall, and then I was stuck in this stairwell. And there was this voice. I couldn't see anything because I didn't know what to do. Because it was a really quaint kind of apartment building that had one of those elevators that that you close with your hand.
Yeah.
And but but it had stairs. So I was like, oh, no problem. Because that's usually what I did. I took the stairs and, this really wide staircase. And so I said, oh, I'll just run on out the front door. Well, something told me as I was going down the stairs, it's getting hotter every step you're taking. And so then I stopped in the stairwell and I just, I was crying and I was like, Jesus, help me. And so this voice came. I couldn't see, but he said, "Come up here." And I was like, "Up? You want me to go up in a
I'm trying to
burning
get out of
building?"
here.
Right. But I did. And so, sure enough, this man, he led me back to the fire exit that I had run right past. I had never known about that. Couldn't believe that. I
Mm.
didn't know that it was there. And led me down. And the interesting thing about him was he had already brought his family out. Like he had no reason to be back in that building. And
But to
so,
save you.
right. And so then we're out there for a little while. And then, of course, they let us come back in. And I come back in, and my Bible's sitting there on my bed, just sitting there. And it's like, you need to get back into, to get back, be
So
more
you're saying you did
disciplined.
not leave your Bible there.
No, not that I remembered. Not that I remembered, but it was just it was in view, just, and I was like, okay. And so then I really really got it together, and I had just, broken up with my college sweetheart. So a lot had happened in the span of 18 months after I
Mm.
got out of college. And so that was a turning that hey, I was back in church, I was singing in the choir. I was doing everything.
So, Lord, you
And
didn't save
so
me for nothing. Let me act like I understand.
yeah, and prepared myself to go back to graduate school because I really wasn't working on positioning myself for that. Really wasn't. So I started doing that. And yeah, and- yeah,
Well, Carol, your little girl journey has brought you to this place where you are
yes.
consulting, guiding parents. How
Hmm.
did you come into that? And tell us more about what you do.
I came into that really inspired by my twin sons, honestly, because I was in corporate marketing
Mm.
prior to that, and I came home on maternity leave and thought sure I'd be back in 4 to 6 months, but I enjoyed them, and so I kept extending, calling the office and saying, I'm gonna take another month. I'm gonna do whatever. So it ended up almost being like a year. And so, uh, but at about 13 months, we noticed that our one of our sons was kind of plateauing with the milestones. And
Mm.
so, shortly after that, he was diagnosed with pervasive developmental delays. And so,
Mm.
once we had two opinions, got two opinions, and once I looked at the report uh, and saw all of the things that we'd need to do, the types of support he would need. I was like, it makes no sense to have anybody else driving my child around to these appointments. And so I just resigned permanently and started taking him to the appointments and just being home with the boys in general. And I started learning a lot from the speech and language therapist, the occupational therapist. They would give me homework. They'd tell me, hey, this is what we worked on today, and this is what you should do at home. And so I just did a deep dive into child development. And then, of course, when they hit the teachable twos, I felt like I needed some parenting skills. So I went to take some parenting classes for myself because I wanted to make sure that I treated them as individuals and not forcing them to act one particular way because it was going to help me. So I
Right.
wanted to make sure I honored their personalities because one thing staying at home did give me was an opportunity to see how, especially when they started crawling and walking, how they saw the world, and it was very different.
Mm.
So I wanted to make sure I honored that with them. And so when I started taking the classes with the nonprofit organization, after about the second course, I should say, they were like, "Oh, why don't you think about taking our leadership course so you can start teaching?" And I was like, oh, "No way, I don't know anything." And so I kept taking classes, and then finally they kept saying it. They kept saying, "We really want you to do leadership. You can still keep taking classes if you want, but take leadership." And so I did that and earned my certification with them. And then by then, my boys were about 2.5. And so I
Mhm.
said that, oh, actually, one night I had gone to sleep. I was really tired, had a meeting with a mom's group that I had been president of, and I had turned over everything to the new president. So I was ready to sleep well. I was relieved that I was no longer going to be in that role. And I couldn't sleep. I mean, well, I started to sleep, but then God woke me up, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so tired, God." He was like,
I know.
he
Then you're
was
like,
like, he was like, "Listen, all of the stuff that you're learning from the therapists that are working with your son, that's not just for you. That's for other parents to help them. They want to help their children reach their full potential just like you. So you're going to be teaching parents." And I was like, "God, nobody wants to hear me speak." He's like, "Oh yeah, they will." And then he was saying, we were really in this conversation, and I was pointing out things that I was like, well, I don't know how to do this. He's like, ask so and so. And I said, yeah, but I mean, I don't know how to do that. Like plan events, for example. He's like,
Uh-huh.
oh, you should ask her. And just he had something for every one of my objections. And I was like, well, God, nobody's gonna pay. Nobody's gonna want to pay to hear me speak. He said, oh yeah, they're gonna pay you. And then he's like, but get them ready for kindergarten first. And then that was the end of the conversation. And I was like, but I wanted to ask some more questions. And it was like he was gone. You
He's like,
know,
we're done.
he
I
like
told you what I told you.
I said what I said. He dropped it in my lap and he was like, but get him ready for kindergarten. So that was 3 years later. And not going to say I started the business 3 years later because I was like really like for real. I mean, that was that was big because I didn't even think of being an entrepreneur at that point. So, it took me a little time to get around to it. And then I started one company with another mom. And then I went, let's see, we dissolved that company and I really just stuck more on my path that he gave me originally.
Back to that listening and doing what you
Oh,
hear, right?
yeah, because I didn't. I definitely was like Jonah. I just like surely I'm not going to be doing this. You can't mean that. And of course, because in the beginning it looked like it would be hard to do. And it was especially hard to do by myself. And so, I definitely had a Jonah moment where I kind of did all kinds of other things. I mean, still within the realm of what, parent education, but not the way he said. And it wasn't until I would say 2015 that I did it the way he said because he inserted himself again and
Okay.
provided an opportunity for me to be on a radio show.
Oh.
And that was the name of the radio show was, well, not only to be on it but to host it. And
Oh.
it was called the Parenting 411 show. And so what started as what I thought would be 1 year of experimentation ended up being 6 years. And then I trademarked the name and took it.
Oh, wow. So then how does that is that now your podcast?
Well, it's my podcast, it's my platform. It's the Parenting 411 is the platform where I do public speaking, I do the coaching, and I write my books. But the Parenting 411 podcast is just an extension of that.
Understood. So tell us about your books. Nine-time author. Tell us
Yes. So I
more.
started off. So I've participated in a few anthologies. The first book to be released with any aspect of my story in it was actually an anthology for women entrepreneurs. And so it's called Courageous Enough to Launch. And there were stories in it by other women entrepreneurs telling their story. And so there's a piece of what I shared in my chapter is also in my book. And my book is a mini motherhood memoir, I call it. It's the excuse me, Mother's Work, Pearls of Wisdom and Gems from My Journey. And so in it, I talk about 7 pillars in my life that really are what I held on to in my motherhood journey. Like when I reflected back on it, and I was still in motherhood. I mean, I was still parenting teens, I believe, when I finished it. So when I was working on it, so I was still in the thick of it. And so that's what it is. And it was a book that I would have loved to have had I found when my children were younger and they had appointments, I always had a book or a magazine or something in my purse. And so I wanted this to be a book that someone could put in their purse and take with them.
Yeah.
And because it's divided into 7 chapters dealing with particular issues, they could turn, after having read the book in full, they could always come back to a particular chapter on courage, on purpose, on faith, on family, those kinds of things.
I'm so glad you listed what those chapters, some of those pillars were, because that was what I was thinking. I was like, that made me curious. That is so
Hmm.
beautiful.
Thank you.
What would you share with our listeners that have been brought here by divine appointment, like the ones you've described? You're not here by accident. What would Carol tell a woman who's in this little girl healing journey, who's a mother?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, you can't go wrong if you practice connection before correction. That's really get to know who your child is through their eyes and understand them from their heart, their head, and their hands. So that means what they love, what they care about, their head, meaning what they think about, and that means developmentally as well. Like what are they capable of thinking about? And then their hands, what do they tend to do? And
Mm-hmm.
meet them there. And that's how you teach them the rules of the road. I mean, you are really their coach. Well, as children, you are really their hands-on manager. And then
Mm-hmm.
you transition to a coach. And then as they get still older, you're the consultant. And then if you do all that right and you honor all of those steps, you can be their friend. But don't try to be their friend too early.
Good. And it is, and that's in alignment with the scripture that I think always needs a subtitle or a subtext. Train up a child in the way he they should go.
Mm-hmm.
Not you should go. You think they should go, but it takes the
Mm-hmm.
observation that you spoke about to know how you train each child differently. And as a parent of twins in particular, I love that you really took the time to, again, back to that discernment and back to that observation, to notice they were different. The
Mm-hmm.
twins
Mm-hmm.
that go through life having to wear the same clothes when they don't want to, or their styles are different, their preferences are different. Did you
Well, that's
experience
and
that
that's
with
the
yours?
funny thing. The funny thing that you say about that. When I was pregnant, I had the benefit of a few sets of twins that worked in my agency. I worked in the government. And so I was able to talk to one woman who raised twins, and her twin girls were identical. So I got to have that perspective. And then I talked to some folks who actually were twins. And one thing that just kept coming up with them was what you said. Like they wanted us to do the same things and they dressed alike. I had one woman tell me that her father, because their mother had died when they were young, he had them dressing alike almost to college. So I, I mean, they laughed. They certainly could laugh about it then, but yeah, that was the thing. That whole bit about treating them as a unit, and I knew that it would be tempting because I will just have them be operate the way it was going to be easy for me to parent them. That was going to be
Mhm.
easy. Like my one son, who had all the energy, I could just tame him and just get him to be like the other one. Just be quiet, right? But that wouldn't have been good. God didn't bring him into the
Right.
world to be that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
certainly they needed some guidance to understand that sometimes you are going to have to turn that down, right? In the
Mhm.
classroom or when you grow up and you're working in an office or whatever, you've got to have some discipline, but make sure you carve out some time to be playful because you like that, right?
Yeah.
And then my other son who wanted to be more observant and just hang on the side, well, there's a time for that, but you also need to get involved because that's how you're going to learn and grow. And then, you can go back and observe, but you got to come out.
Yeah. Like you said, to go from observant to being observant to action. The
Yes.
observation is to take in information so you know how to act, but you have to feel safe enough. And so you had to train him in,
Mm-hmm.
at what point is it safe to go in, to jump in the deep end.
Right. Right. Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, this has been wonderful. I'm so grateful that we had this time, Carol. It's been a long time coming, but I'm glad we got to meet
Yes.
in person and before getting to do this. So thank you so much for just the valuable offer. How can people find you should they be in this situation that need
Follow
they
me.
need some consultant? They need a consultant to help them with their parenting.
Okay. Well, my website is carolmuleta.com. I am the Parenting 411 on all of the social media platforms. Come on over there, follow me. I have the Parenting 411 community on Facebook. Join that as well. And there you'll be able to hear about some upcoming events that I have. As I shared with you when we were talking earlier, I have the Ministry of Mom experience that's coming up. So you can learn more about that at ministryofmom.com/interest because we have an interest list going so that people will just be informed. We already had our Cyber Monday sale, so there are going to be some more holiday treats coming along, but that sale, of course, is closed.
And when is that event?
It's May 2nd, 2026, in Washington, D.C.
So people could fly out.
They sure can. The more
Being
the
in
merrier.
California, I'm thinking got a little travel, but in May, that's
Hmm.
probably a beautiful time to be in that area. So
It
thank you
is.
again.
Thank
I'm
you.
so excited for you and just such a blessing because our children do not come with a manual. And to
They don't
have
come
the
with a
insight,
manual. They sure don't. But the Parenting 411 is here to help.
thank you. Have a wonderful time. To the woman who's watching, and your little girl healing journey is connected to your parenting, connected to how you show up in the world, how you love your children, how you're able to give your children, how you're able to see your children. Get on your healing journey so that you can apply the principles that Carol has offered. We'll put the link so you can get access to her content, follow her, buy her books, get that outline to help support you. And there's the No More Lies healing journal, that workbook that I have created so that you can find out what your little girl needs so that you can take care of your little girl and your little boy. It's been such a blessing today. And we just ask you to like, subscribe, and share. There's something you've heard in here, something that you need more of, that we can get back to you. Have a good day and be blessed.
Thank you for watching Staci Speaks Hope. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. To schedule a free coaching call, the link is in the description.
Grown woman, holding in story she needs to tell what God really wants you to do in this world. In His name, hope to break free from the shackles and the lies that have become your truth and put blinders on your eyes. You built walls around your heart. You have plugged up your ears. Get freedom to hope's what you need. It's in reach. Wipe your tears.